It's also the shape of the palm. It's also the length of the fingers. It's the curvature of the fingers. It's the fingerprints. It's the textures. It's the spots on the lines, the circles on the lines, and the lines themselves, and the relationship between the lines. And what's being expressed in the palms is, as well as in the face and the lines on the feet, is how the soul is sitting in the body. I work from Transformational Palmistry, which is the Vedic tradition, and in that tradition, the palm is an expression of the soul going from lifetime to lifetime. There's an oversoul called Nakasha, and the oversoul makes a decision to come into a particular life for a reason. And so somebody else tell me about their experience with palm reading. I'm going to work with your experience as much as I can. Anybody else have their experience being read? Yeah. What happened when you had a palm reading?
I can't remember the first time, but I know the last time a woman from South Africa read my palm, and I pretty much told her, I don't want to know, I just want you to read it and just tell me one word. And the only thing she could tell me was, whoa.
Whoa. Okay. So there's different methods, there's different traditions in different countries, but the point I want to make is that the person isn't reading both your palms, they're not doing you any service. One palm is the dominant palm, or the dominant hand, and the other one is the non-dominant hand. Does anyone have any experience with non-dominant handwriting, where you ask yourself a question with the dominant hand and you answer with the non-dominant hand? Try that. But the non-dominant hand is what you were born with, what your potential is, what your challenges are, what you brought in from your karmic accumulation, of challenges that you have to overcome, of handicaps that you came in with, lessons that you were supposed to learn, burdens that you were carrying. And your right hand, or your dominant hand, tells you what you do in reality with your potential, okay? So unless the person is comparing the dominant hand to the non-dominant hand, they're not really giving you a palm reading. It's like going to the eye doctor and only having one eye examined, okay? You have to examine both eyes in order to get the corrective lenses, okay? And that's a second thing I wanted to say, is to just for the reader to look and say something isn't really a transformational palmistry reading. A transformational palmistry reading is when you do a reading and you give remedies of how somebody can adjust and change and further live up to their potential. So, for example, hold up your non-dominant hand, okay, and somebody tell me where the little finger lands. Does it go over the line of the last knuckle starting on the second finger? Or is it under there?
Mine's under.
Yours under? Okay. So you came in economically challenged. Now tell me where it is on your other hand.
Below.
It's still below. Okay, so a remedy I would give you is to take some oil. What's your favorite oil?
Frankincense.
Okay, take frankincense oil and massage regularly, once a day for 5 minutes, your little finger, and pull it up. Pull it up. Now, is the little finger going to grow? Probably not. But what's going to happen is you're moving that energy, you're moving that key forward, and you're going to increase your money-making potential, your economic abundance, your prosperity, however that's defined in your life. Because what you're looking for is for that little finger to become higher on the other hand, okay? So that's a remedy. That's how palmistry can be transformational. It's when the palmist looks at both hands, compares. Now, if your little finger had been a lot higher on your dominant hand, I would have said, good, you've overcome your challenges, but you haven't overcome your challenges, so I gave you that remedy on your potential hand so that you can live up further, increase your potentials for earning capacity, okay? So that's an example of what's transformational in palmistry. You have to compare both palms and then give a remedy to further your potential, okay? Now, a lot of people just, the reason why palmistry one of the reasons palmistry has a bad reputation is that people just pick up a book and go into a bar and say, hey sailor, you want a palm reading, buy me a drink. And believe me, there are a lot of charlatans out there doing it. But when I was first when this person first read my palms and I saw that she actually knew a lot about me, she wasn't doing transformational palmistry, but she was telling me a lot about myself just by reading my palms, that she'd never met me before. I was down in Mexico after that, working in tourism on a Caribbean island called Isla Mujeres. And I was reading tarot cards because that's what I'd been doing in the women's music festivals. But I was representing the gypsy archetype, you know, traveling, living in a cheap hotel, walking around in the cafes, doing card readings. And the locals started coming to me to get card readings, and then they would ask me if I could read palms, because to them, the gypsy fortune teller archetype would also be able to read palms. So I knew somebody back in Tepoztlan who was a palm reader, and I went back to Tepoztlan, which is up in central Mexico, and I asked him to teach me palmistry. And he literally took my palm, he took my left palm, which was my potential, and he put his right thumb in the center of my left palm, and he pressed down, and he said, everything you need to know about palmistry is within you. And when he did that, he passed his lineage of palmistry into my system. Now, I know a lot of you are mystics here, so you can kind of believe that something like that would happen. But I thought he was just poo-pooing me and brushing me aside, so I went back to Cozumel and I bought all the palmistry books I could, and I read and I read and I read for a few weeks. And then I went back to the island where I was working, and I went back to work, and within another 3 weeks I had just thrown away my tarot cards because it was so evident. First of all, there's a lot of wind, so when you're trying to read tarot cards on a windy island, you lose the cards, it's difficult. But people really resonate with what's told with them if the imprint is actually on their body. A lot of times people can reject with a lot of skepticism something that comes up in a card. If they don't believe in spirit, they don't understand. They can reject more easily what you say, but if it's right on your body, it resonates more with them, and you can have more life-changing effects by reading palms. So I threw out my cards and on that particular trip, and made 3 times the money as well. So, but the question is, how? I mentioned that the Nakastra comes along and it chooses a body and it goes into the body. And when you're looking at what happens in the hands, what you're looking at is how well the soul is actually sitting in the body. It's like how a shoe holds the foot, right? You can wear a shoe, but maybe the foot isn't right fitting into the shoe because maybe there's a pebble, or maybe there's something's wrong with the shoe and it doesn't really fit. So when you give a palm reading and you give transformational advice and remedies, you can help the person open up their brain to receive their soul a little bit. And a lot of palm readers, well, if you read the books and so forth, not only my books, which cite a lot of other books, but a lot of palmists who know what they're doing look at the lines on the hand as electrical impulses that come from the brain. And where did this brain get the electrical impulses? But from the soul. So I want you to also look, anyone who's had a palm reading or not, or anyone who has a palm, take your dominant hand and look for the line that's at the bottom, linked down here to the very bottom where the wrist lines are. And tell me if you have a line that goes up the middle of your palm. Do you have one, Fran? How far does it go up?
It goes up and meets this one.
It meets the
second one down.
It meets the second one, okay. So it meets your lifeline.
Okay.
Okay, so it meets the heart line. So you're a heart-centered person. That line that comes up the center is the destiny. I have a tendency to walk around when I'm talking, so it's hard for me to stay at the microphone, or I would come look at your palm. But the ideal destiny line starts at the bottom and goes all the way up to the mound below the middle finger. That's called the Saturn mound. And that's somebody who's really living their destiny. I would say you have some living to do yet to get a hold of your destiny. If it's wavy, if it splits, if it stops halfway up your palm, you're not really living your destiny. You have more to do on the earth plane to completely live your calling. And that's something that's very easy to do in a palm reading, is to look at somebody's destiny line and also to compare. If it's stronger on their potential and completely buried on the reality, you can say, hey, you got to do a lot more to live up to your potential. And what I do is trace their palm and draw for them the destiny line going straight up And I ask them to meditate on that 5 minutes a day. Put it by their mirror where they brush their teeth in the morning, put it over their bed so it's the first thing they see when they wake up, put it right next to their bed so it's the first thing they see when they open their eyes. And what that does is increase the channel for destiny to come in. I've seen lines grow, or I've seen lines change, let me put it right in the middle of a reading when I'm given a remedy. Because, if you think about it, the palms, the lines on the palm, now we're just talking about the lines. I've never seen a finger grow in the middle of a reading, but I have seen lines change, okay? Because if we're looking at the lines on the palm as coming from impulses from the brain, and the impulses from the brain coming from the soul, if the soul is getting attention on the outside, if I'm outside of you, and the soul feels my spiritual energy, and the soul wants to connect and wants to leap out, the soul is going to send a strong impulse, like we all feel strong impulses when we're here in church. You're going to feel a strong impulse to get out there and connect, and the line can change. And also, the brain, we know about setting positive intentions. If you set a positive intention in your mind, you can change your life. How many people believe that? Yep. Okay, so if you set a positive intention in your brain, you can change your lines, which can reinforce your ability to change your life, okay? Now, I can give readings and give remedies at these festivals that I go to every year, and somebody will come back and they say, I thought you were crazy when you told me to do this or that, but you know what, it really happened, and I work at yoga festivals too, and somebody came up to me last year, I hadn't been working at that festival for a while, and she said, I still have the notes from the reading that you gave me, and my lines really changed, so I get a lot of validation from this practice to know that it's real. There's more information where you can look at these charts and see what I'm talking about on the website I have, which is psychic medium with or without tools.info. Just the word psychic medium with or without tools.info. Somebody told me that's a very long handle, but and there's pictures of the palms and there's explanations of this method of palm reading. And another thing I said was that there are a lot of charlatans doing palm reading, like in bars, just to make money to get sailors to buy them. Some people have told me they did that before. But another reason people have a negative attitude about palmistry is because the witches were burnt during the Inquisition, during the burning times, and a lot of women's folk knowledge was eradicated, and palmists were on the list to be burnt, and it was made illegal in a lot of countries that had the Inquisition. So in Europe, the gypsy fortune tellers came originally, some say, from India, from the class that was from a class that was excommunicated from India, and they left and they went down to Egypt, and then they came up to Europe, and those people traveled giving palm readings, and you can find pictures in the books of women giving palm readings. And then during the Enlightenment, palmistry was poo-pooed, and hand analysis grew up, and then all of a sudden the graphic images and paintings after that period are men with compasses and scientific tools giving diagrams. And so there's two schools in palmistry. There's palmistry and hand analysis. And there's wars between those two different schools that you can find online, or someone will say, I'm a hand analyst, I'm a hand analyst, I'm not a palm reader, but so some of the negative veneer comes from actual persecution of palmists, just like persecution of witches and eradication of folklore knowledge. But it was practiced in Europe in front of the churches. The cardinals, the people in the hierarchy in the churches used to go get palms read to see if they were going to get a promotion in the church. So prior to the institution of the the Inquisition, palmistry was even followed by people in the church. And I learned from working and reading in my study and working in Jerusalem, Kabbalistic rabbis take this very seriously and it's the only kind of divination that they take seriously, because the body is here on loan from God, and anything that's on the body is from God, and so therefore you can interpret what God is communicating. So, through the soul to the person about their life. Now, people have done a lot to change their lines. In some cultures, you have to show your palm when you go for a job interview. In Korea, people alter their lines in order to get better interviews, because there's some lines that can show ecumenical economic acumen, and so this transformational through meditation is the technique that I use. But in the tantra, in the markets in India 1,000 years ago, they did tantric drawings. You know, you would go to a palmist and he would send you, and it was a he, it wasn't she. He would send you to a tantric artist who would make a diagram for you with symbols on it and stuff of your palms and of your feet to help you meditate to change what reality you were bringing in. So this tradition of transformational palmistry goes way back. I'm not in favor of the surgery to change your lines, but modern cultures have done that. I mean, there's so much to cover. Modern psychologists like Carl Jung tried to recover this. There's been studies done in prisons. How many people have heard of simian lines? Okay, simian line is when instead of the three major lines, the lifeline, the heart line, and the mind line, there's just two. And somebody said that prisoners and criminals had this formation. So if you only have two lines instead of the three major lines, you say you're a simian. But sometimes those are people that stand up to authority, and it might be good, and it might be a genius. It might be somebody who acts from their heart instead of from their mind, following society. So that's another thing I want to caution you about, is if you go to a palm reader and they quote-unquote say something bad, go to another palm reader. It's like getting a second opinion, because there's different ways to interpret the same lines on the hand. How am I doing on time?
You're doing good.
I'm doing good, okay. So I've got tons of stuff to say that I marked to say in the books. Okay, another thing I wanted you to, this one line that comes from, if you go like this in an L, and the very first line stretches down, and it should curve around to the bottom, that's called your lifeline. Now most people, when they walk past my booth, I say, do you want a palm reading? They say, I don't want to know. What they mean is they don't want to know when they're going to die. And this length of the palm line, of the lifeline, is a very significant factor. But there could be breaks in that line where you leap over to the destiny line and accomplish your destiny. But that's the lifeline. And how far it swings around is how far you're going to live. That's how long you're going to live. Like, I'm going to live to be 90. And sometimes, at least 90. I was told, I studied with palmists in India, and I was told that. And once I was on a very windy, scary road in India with my daughter, and I was terrified. And she goes, you're going to be living to be 90, Mom. You know, so sometimes the knowledge can change what's in your brain and help you live. And I always tell people that it's like when you're driving a car down a road. It's good to have the knowledge, because if something comes up in the road, you still got the steering wheel of your life. That's another thing. Palmistry, sometimes people say, oh, that's just written destiny, and they'll forecast it, and they'll tell me something and I don't want to know. And what I say is it's a dialectical process between what you know and how you use the knowledge that you get. So it's an adjustment of your mind's relationship to your soul, to your body, so you can take your path better. You can drive the car of your ego better along the path. So I hope I've imparted a more flexible interpretation of palmistry than some that you might have had from popular culture and maybe some bad experiences. Does anyone have any questions? Because I can focus on answering questions. Yes?
I have two questions.
Okay.
One question is, suppose you were born left-handed and your mother forced you into being right-handed. And when I've had palm readings, they've only read one palm, so I don't know.
You've got to read.
Yeah, so
You've got to read both.
Right.
And that's an unfortunate thing that used to happen,
Mm-hmm.
but you should still have a palm reader read the dominant one that you're actually dominating with now.
Okay.
So if you were born left-handed, you were still forced into right-handedness. So your potential, your reality, how you deal with reality, is being seen in your dominant hand. It's like if a beggar in a favela in a Brazilian ghetto was born with the talents of Mozart, but they didn't have the environment that Mozart had to bring out the classical music trait. That's a way to look at the difference between potential and reality. So your reality hand shows what reality you've actually been doing, so whichever one it is. But you had two questions. Does that answer
the
the
other
first
one
question?
is, since you know about tarot cards,
Mhm.
what is the hydrophon in the tarot card?
Well, that's a whole other topic, because I don't believe in fixed meanings to tarot cards either. I believe in spirit interpretations that you get hit with while you're doing a reading. And intuitive interpretations in the moment is what I believe in. And we all know Walt, or most of us here do, and when I was giving a talk here the last time, he suggested just look in the center of the palm and look for an image that appears in the center of the palm, which is where the destiny is. And I switched to doing that kind of reading and throwing out all this knowledge, and that's a place where spirit appears, is right in the center of your palm. So it's possible just to watch a little film, if you're a medium, and watch the film that comes up as the person cups their hands. So you don't need to have all the knowledge of the books to read palms. And another thing I want to say is I also work as a phone psychic, and if I can use this information on the phone. If somebody is calling me and they're having all these impulses and images and visions, and I say, take your hand straight out and tell me how easy it is to bend your fingers back. And the person this morning, or last night, it was in the middle of the night, she said she could bend her fingers 90 degrees back. And I said, you have psychic abilities. You need to get into a psychic development class, go to TCOTA and get in the Zoom class. It's Mondays, twice a week, and study with Reverend Vicki Jones. Because, we all need to learn how to channel these spiritual awareness issues that come up. And so I think we can learn how to channel them and then use palmistry or use tarot cards. But afterwards we can talk about that. Yeah, Fran.
Well, so how does arthritis or Parkinson's or anything that affects your hands affect the palm reading?
We always read everything. We read the illness as well as the wellness. So I paid money to get a gel manicure yesterday because I have a big bruise right in the middle of my thumb on my right hand, and some people give entire readings just based on the thumb, which has your ego in the world, and I'm going through some transformation because I'm trying to get my house ready to sell and move into a condo in Florida, and I'm very bruised by this whole experience. So if I couldn't get an appointment, I was going to tell you that you read the frailties and the injuries that you have, if you have a cut, if you're unable to move a certain finger, like if you're unable to move, all of these fingers represent talents. This is Mercury, this is Apollo. Apollo is your talent finger. If you've got arthritis and you can't move your what most people call a ring finger, then you need to work on using your talents, and it will help your arthritis with that finger. I don't mean to be glib, but that's what I would do in a reading, is see which finger is paralyzed and where and how, and then would give a remedy. Somebody came to me once and she said she was losing her hearing, and I got a vision of telling her to sit on a cliff over the ocean. We were in Santa Cruz, and play a flute, and she started crying. So sometimes you can give healing images that help reverse where the person has difficulty moving their hands, that are specific to that person. I have 2 more questions. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, in the back.
Yeah, a quick question and a comment. My question is, for the people who surgically alter their palms, does it actually change them, or does it not do anything because it's done artificially?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I didn't like the fact that it happened. It happens in Korea. It happens in Russia. I don't know for a fact. I've read about it. Mm-hmm. I've never actually seen a hand that was surgically altered, but I know it's a practice, and I know in Israel you can get it done too. And some people fly from other countries to Israel to get it done.
Wow.
It's considered, well, we know what happens with altering your body surgery. It's very common these days. Mm-hmm. So I don't, but I can't answer your question. I'll research it though. Thank you for your question. It's a good question.
Definitely. And the comment is, I totally understand what you said was when you kind of give someone that remedy, and then their palms change in that moment. Because I do energy healing, and oftentimes after a session, physically they'll be different. Their face will change, or they'll have a mark on their skin and it'll be gone.
Yes.
Or I had these kind of marks on the outside of my eyes for months, and I did a healing session on myself. Me and one other person, we were doing a group healing. And at the end of the healing, I didn't really think anything of it. And the next day I was looking in the mirror, and I saw the marks in my eyes were gone. I was like, oh, and they've been there for months, and my intuition was yeah, it was a direct result of what we did yesterday.
Yes, I'm really glad you brought that up. When I'm trying to talk people into getting a reading, if they're drawn to me, but they just stand there and say they don't believe in it, I say, well, have you ever had a chiropractic adjustment? And generally they have, or an acupuncture treatment, or it's an energy adjustment is what you're getting. You're adjusting the width, breadth, and position of the channel that the brain is able to send electrical impulses through. And acupuncturists are they really understand what I'm doing. And in terms of alterations, I do want to say, I have worked with henna artists who, instead of, I've sent people at the Floyd Yoga Jam, there's a henna artist, and I send people who need their destiny line extended or their heart line extended or whatever to the henna artist, and they come back. It's on my website, Psychic Medium, with or without tools. And they get the henna artist to draw the hand. So that's another way to line up their hand. So as long as there's some kind of adjustment, some change will happen.
Right.
So I would imagine if the person goes to the trouble to get the surgery, some change will happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because I've never done it to someone, and I've never had somebody come back and tell me that what I did to them changed their lives, where I have it. So based on my knowledge, I can't answer that question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, there was another question. Somebody else had a question in this area. I have trouble because the windows are hiding all your faces. Fran.
So, I don't know whether it was you or Lydia mentioned that you're having a class in August, and is that going to be in person or online?
You know, it's supposed to be here in person. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. August 19th from 1 to 3, there's a class here in the church. You can contact me if you want to do it online, because I can offer a class online and figure out how to pay the church some money anyway.
No, I was trying to, I think it'd be better in person myself.
It's much better in person, but I do virtual readings. I do readings of palms from people all over the world. People call me up from India, contact me from India because I study with famous palmists over there, and I mention it in the columns, and so I get contacted. So I can do readings virtually, and I have taught a palmistry class online. But that one on August 19th from 1 to 3 is here in the church, and we would appreciate pre-registration. And you'll get a reading, and you'll read each other's palms, and you'll get much more systemized, organized knowledge than what you got here in 20 minutes. Yeah.
Just real quick, are you local?
I live in Cleveland Heights, but I'm in and out of town a lot because I work festivals.
Okay, and do you take appointments?
Yes, I do take appointments, and I did bring some cards with me if anybody's interested in making
And
appointments.
I'll take one too. And also, I know you mentioned you're an author. Did you happen to bring any books that you may have in your car or otherwise that we could purchase?
I have 3. I have 2 copies of Volume 2, and I have 1 copy of Volume 1.
Oh, okay.
And they're $15 each. And
Okay.
at home, I have a video too, a DVD, which shows me talking about palms and hands and reading people's hands and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah, Fran.
I just want to say thanks a lot. This was a whole new avenue that I never really thought much. I mean, I knew you were a palmist. I never discounted it, but I just didn't know much about it, and I find it really interesting. So,
Well,
especially the connection that you said, you know, what I like the best is that, you know, our bodies are on loan from God, and everything about Him is like a message from God or a symbol from God. I think that's really interesting and really.
Yes, if you hold that belief, then a lot of palmistry makes sense. If you don't have that belief, palmistry doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you. That means a lot to me, Fran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh,